Welcome to the Pursuit of Constant Improvement podcast, the fitness and self-improvement podcast for those who are looking to become the best human being possible. If your goal is to improve your mind, your body, and your routine, then you are in the right place. If you gain some value from this episode, I would be incredibly grateful if you could rate the podcast on Spotify or subscribe on YouTube. But without further ado, I'm your host, Connor Malone, and this is the Pursuit of Constant Improvement. In today's episode, I'm going to be sharing with you my learnings from the breakthrough experience with Dr. John Demartini. 2 weeks ago, I went to London for this experience. It was pretty incredible. And what I took there was 14 pages of notes over 26 hours of learning. It was split into 2 days, and all of the learnings I got from that over those 16 pages, I'm about to share with you the very best parts of that. Now, if you enjoy this episode, I actually have in the description below a concise version of my notes. So again, if you pick up some valuable points from this and you want to learn even more about the things that I picked up, then you can go into the description and get those notes for free. Now, this seminar was about human behavior and self-mastery. Two huge things, two huge aspects of self-improvement. So of course, for me, as somebody who values self-improvement and somebody who coaches self-improvement, this was a great opportunity for me. Now, I spent £2,000 to be there, including my ticket there, including my accommodation and how I got down there. So this was a big investment for me. In fact, it was the biggest investment I've ever made in my own education. So for this was a big step, and the lessons that I learned, you're going to get for free. Now, it's important to understand what those two things are, because as I said, self-mastery and human behavior, those are the two things that he covered mostly. Self-mastery is when you become in total control of your emotions and actions. So you can imagine that if you master the self, you can stay in better control of your emotions, you can make better decisions and actions, and therefore start to create the type of life that you want to live. In terms of what most people do, and including myself, we lack emotional control. We lack our ability to control our emotions and our impulses. So self-mastery is the antidote to that. You have control over your actions, so you can then control what area of your life you start to pursue improvement in. Now, the second part was human behavior. So human behavior is simply the way that we act and interact as human beings. Why we do what we do. It's so interesting because a lot of the things, for example, obviously I work with clients, so different people, everybody is different. And I need to understand why people do the things that they do, why they act in certain ways. That's something that really interests me. So for me, learning from Dr. Demartini was incredible because he is renowned as one of the world's leading experts on human behavior. So it was pretty incredible. And again, learning why we do what we do is so important. If you think of your situation, like maybe it's a boss at work, maybe it's in your relationships, maybe it's in your friendships. Sometimes you'll think like, why is this person doing what they're doing? Human behavior can teach us that, because humans, we don't act at random. We act based on things that have evolved through thousands and thousands of years of human beings. We do things for a specific reason. So if you understand human behavior, you understand why people do what they do. A really important thing. Now, I'm going to go over, as I said, the biggest lessons, the biggest takeaways that I got from this event. If you want any more of the lessons, as I said in the beginning, drop into the description below and you will find my concise notes on that. So I'm going to go in depth on some of these lessons. Now, the very first one I want to start with is the 7 key areas of life. Now, the 7 key areas of life is the path to self-mastery. What John Demartini explains is we have to become self-governing in all areas of life. Now, if we take ownership and we take responsibility of these areas of our life, we start to pursue and achieve self-mastery. Now, I'll explain which all of them are. First of all, we have spiritual, which he defines as your meaningful purpose or your inspired mission for life. The second one is mental, which is for him, creating innovative ideas and contributing to the world using your mental capacities to the fullest. The third one is vocational. So that's your career success, your achievements, and your service to others, how you help others on this planet. Financial, which of course could be financial freedom, financial independence. You have familial, which is your family, love, and intimacy. Social, which is social influence and leadership. And then physical, your health, your well-being. So those are the 7 key areas of life. And his belief is that for all of those key areas, we need to take governance of them. So he has this quote and he says, any area of your life you don't develop, you become vulnerable. Now, one of the examples that he used in this was he's worked with a lot of different people. He's worked with a very common group of people that he works with is women who have been married to men that are extremely wealthy. Okay, so these women have a lot of things going for them. They're beautiful women. Some of them are really intelligent. They have a lot of aspects of their life figured out. They have the family aspects, they have the friendships, the social aspects of it. And then what happens is if when their partner leaves them, they realize they have no money. They have no understanding of finances. So that leaves them in a very, very vulnerable position. So you can see how that's just an example of you could have every area of your life could be almost full, but then if you don't understand and if you don't take ownership of your own financial side of your life, you're left vulnerable. So again, you could have all the things from a spiritual, mental capacity, from a physical standpoint, but financially, you don't take ownership and you don't take governance of that, you'll become overrun. That could be by other people because you're dependent on them, or it could be debt. Because again, you cannot manage your finances, so you fall into debt. So that is why all of these key areas in life, we have to take power of, we have to take governance, or you will be overpowered in those areas. One of the things he said, which I loved, was this whole point of if we don't develop these areas, we become dependent. Now, he says that the most ungrateful and unhappy people are those who are dependent. I can already picture those people in my life, the people that I know that are unhappy and ungrateful. They depend on others for certain areas of their life. Again, commonly it could be financially, it could be spiritually, it could be mentally. They depend on other people. So what we want to do with all our key areas of life is take governance of them and become in control of them, so we don't need to rely on other people. It's one of the key aspects there. So that's what I took from that. We must take accountability and ownership of our own life, not just one area of it, but these 7 key areas of life. Because I went to this seminar thinking, like, how do we achieve self-mastery? And this is the way they answered it. He says, see these 7 key areas of your life, you need to take governance of them. You need to take control and accountability for each of those areas. If you don't, you will be overpowered in them. You will become vulnerable. Now, one of the next parts that I loved, and this is really the key point of his learning, this is one of the most famous aspects of his teachings, is value determination, which is clarifying your values in life. If you take one thing from this episode, it would be this. This could be one of the most impactful things for your own self-improvement and your own life as a whole. The things that are most important to us in life, the things that we value most, they guide our actions, they guide our decisions. We need to make it very clear in life what we do actually value. Because so many people go through life living by other people's values. They are projected onto them. Like as you grow up in different cultures, we naturally have a set of values based on where we've grown up. Whereas once you take ownership for your own life, you can decide what are your values. You can find out what your values are because they're ingrained into us. They are central to our identity. For example, I'll tell you mine. So my key values in life, like the top 3 of my values are self-improvement, are business, and travel and experiences. So the reason that's so important is that when I spend time working towards any of those things or doing any of those things, I feel incredible. I feel fulfilled. I experience joy, feelings of happiness. Whereas if I spend a lot of my time doing things that are lower on my values, I don't experience that level of joy or fulfillment. So for me, it makes sense to make sure my life is then structured around these key values for me. And that's what he explains we have to do. We have to find out through value determination what the things we value most in life are. Because it's totally individual to you. Everybody is different. And once you find out what you value most, you spend most of your time doing that. He says that as we go through life and we become especially more financially capable, we should delegate other parts of our life. The things that you value least, you delegate. Now, this is an extreme example, but let me use his example. So, John lives on a boat. This boat is called the world. He doesn't own any property, doesn't own any cars. He's one of 100 people that have part ownership of this boat. It is worth $1 billion. So he's a very wealthy guy, as you've probably picked up on. He's 70 years old. He says he hasn't driven a car in 30 years. He hasn't cooked his own meals in 30 years. Which to us is totally mind-blowing. Like we think, like, what the fuck? Like, how could you do that? Well, because he made it very clear, like he does not value cooking. What he does value is time teaching, is time learning, is time studying. His top 3 values are that. It's like learning, writing, and teaching. So he spends all of his time doing that. Which to normal people, that sounds totally absurd. But the level of fulfillment this guy's achieved throughout his life has come from that. He delegates everything else. Now, what you're probably thinking is, okay, well, what if you're not in the financial position to delegate these things? Which is a great question. Well, then what we have to do is we have to reframe. So let's say, for example, me, I don't particularly enjoy cooking and cleaning, but what I can do is reframing that and say, right, well, how does me cooking my own meals, how does me doing this cleaning help me towards my own self-improvement? Help me, well, an example is a huge part of self-improvement is fitness. So cooking my own meals, I can have control over the calories and the nutrients in them, which can help me with my fitness and my physique goals. So we reframe the things that we don't value in life and we tie them to how they help us with our utmost values. So as I said, the most important thing you can take from this episode is finding out and discovering what your true values are in life, what you value most. Because once you start to run your life around these things, you experience more fulfillment than doing anything else at all. If you're unsure on what you value, he has a value determination process. You can find it online. So if you search in John Demartini value determination process, it's 13 questions. These questions are like, how do you spend your time? How do you spend your money? How do you fill your space? Once you start to answer those questions, you answer all of them in as much detail as you can, you'll then start to see similarities in terms of how you spend your time. Like for me, how do I fill my space? Well, my space is filled with, I spend most of my time in the office. There's books, there's my laptop, there's notepads. All of that circles around business and self-improvement because that's how I like to spend my time. So by asking yourself these questions, you start to see, oh, okay, well, I'm spending my time doing this. That means you clearly value that area of your life. So again, I would highly recommend you go through these questions. If you can't find them online, just drop me a message and I'll get them over to you because I have them downloaded on my laptop. So again, value determination, clarify your values, live in alignment with those values. For him, that's what he calls authenticity, leading authentically. One of the good ways actually to discover your values is what is something that nobody has to remind you to do. So for me, nobody has to tell me to go to the gym. I go every day. I need to almost hold myself back. If I need to take a rest day, sometimes I think, oh, well, I'd like to go to the gym. It's good for my mind. I enjoy it. So nobody has to tell me to do that. So where are the areas in your life that nobody has to tell you to do it? Maybe it could be something like drawing. It could be something that you love doing. It could be somewhere you love going. What's something that nobody has to tell you to do? Nobody has to remind you, oh, by the way, do this. Some people, for example, are really good at keeping on top of their finances. Nobody has to tell them to do that. Do you know why? Because they value that financial aspect of their life. They enjoy numbers. They enjoy keeping in control of their finances. It makes them feel in control of their life. So that could be an area of their life that they value and they can explore that. Now, with our values, they can change throughout your life, but there is no universal value system. It's not like, oh, men value this and women value this. Everybody is individual. Some people value different things. So you have to understand that. Because for me, one of the biggest takeaways from the experience was that, especially in relationships, you have to be clear on your values. When I look back in previous relationships and what caused conflict or arguments, it is always a conflict of our values. If one person does not understand the other person's values, it's not going to go well. Now, that is not saying that your values have to be perfectly aligned. You do not have to value the same thing as your partner, but they do have to support and understand what your values are. If they don't, there will be conflict. So again, making that clear for yourself, because if you enter a relationship and you don't know what you value, then how can you do that? So the best thing you can do is understand what are your true values, and then when you're in a relationship, you can both understand what each other's values are. It's a great takeaway that I learned from that. Now, one of the things he says about values is if we spend too much time on things that we don't value, we lower our self-worth. To increase our own confidence, we need to do things that we value. We need to spend time doing that. Whereas so many people don't spend enough time doing the things that they value. They spend time doing things that other people have projected into their lives. So no wonder they don't feel fulfilled or happy. So again, if you don't get clear on what you value, others will project their values onto you. By going through the value determination process, you can figure out what they are. Now, another lesson is people in life will oppose your values. This is natural. Because a lot of people believe is like, oh, these are my values, whatever. Everybody should respect them. Some people aren't going to respect your values. That's fine. Some people you aren't going to get along with. Why? Because your values totally conflict. That's fine. You use your values as a compass for helping you find people that should be in your life and people who shouldn't be. For example, the most meaningful relationships I have are people who align with my values. People who love self-improvement, people who love business, people who love travel and experiencing new things. Guess what? When I find those people, I tend to get along very well with them. So you can use your values as a compass for people who you want to be friends with, for relationships you want to put more time and effort into. So again, if people share the same values of you, the more time you spend with them, there likely is going to be a very good friendship there. If people's values conflict with yours, it's likely going to end in arguments, it's going to end in tears. But you only understand that once you know what your values are. You first have to understand what your own values are before you can see that in other people. So again, when I look at all my best friendships in life, all the best relationships I've built, it's been with people who align with my values, or at least I have a clear understanding of what theirs are. They have a clear understanding of what mine are. Now, another thing that I learned from the seminar was this was an interesting one. This is what he received quite a lot of backlash on. Some people argued with him about this. Now, what he says is, depression is often caused by having unrealistic expectations. Now, when we think of depression, obviously it's caused by many different things. There's not one single cause of depression. But what a lot of people often lead to is, oh, well, there's a biochemical imbalance in the brain. Now, the way that John Demartini explained this, he says, yes, that is a byproduct of unrealistic expectations. So people think of what they don't have. They feel like they lack something. So you can imagine why somebody would be depressed, because they think life should be a certain way. They think that people should treat them nice. They think that they should be entitled to certain things. And then when that doesn't happen, the reality is below their expectations. And then they start to become depressed because their whole outlook on life isn't reality. So that's one of the things he drilled into us, was like reality in terms of what life is actually like. We all have these predisposed conditions of like, oh, this is how life should be. This is how we should expect things to be. It's total bullshit. So you can be blinded by your unrealistic expectations, or you can lower those expectations and look for life as it actually is, reality. Things are going to be tough. Things are going to be shit. Things are going to be mean. Like, people are going to be rude to you. People aren't going to be grateful all the time. If you expect everybody to be the opposite of that and things to be handed to you, then you're never going to be happy and you're going to experience depression. So again, depression comes from when we feel like we lack something. One of the things that Marcus Aurelius says, which aligns really well with this, he says, look at what you have, the things you value most, and think of how much you'd crave them if you didn't have them. That is gratitude. And gratitude is the antidote to unrealistic expectations. Once you become grateful for all the things you have in abundance, you'll start to appreciate life more. So like, think of that question. Think of all the things that you have right now that you totally take for granted. You're listening to this probably through your phone or on your laptop or on an iPad. One of the most powerful devices that's ever been created. But yet you never think of that. You just take it totally for granted. You're like, oh, well, everybody else has got one, so well, why wouldn't I have one? These things could be taken away from us at any point. Your health, both physical and mental, your ability to walk, your ability to talk, your ability to laugh, to live, to love other people, to experience things. We all take this for granted. Like, your ability to wake up in the morning and be, like, not be ill. This is something we constantly take for granted. So again, we have these total unrealistic expectations of life, that everything has to be this way. Everything has to be perfect. If you actually just rewind a little bit and realize all the things you have in abundance, you're going to start to set more realistic expectations. Therefore, you're going to be more happy. You're going to be more fulfilled. You're going to be more grateful, because gratitude is the antidote to that, to these unrealistic expectations. So always think of that, because we live in more abundance now than anybody in human history ever has. Think of 100 years ago, okay? Humans have been around for thousands and tens of thousands of years. And you think of what we have today. You happen to be born in this time. For example, we have phones, we have televisions, we can communicate with anyone in the world at any time. We have access to running water. We have access to any food that we ever want for affordable prices. Like, you can do everything. You're totally, like, you have so many options in the world that nobody has ever had before, yet we're the most depressed that anybody has ever been, because we have so much abundance. But again, coming back to that Marcus Aurelius quote, in terms of, think of how much you crave those things if you didn't have them. We don't take time to think of that. We take everything for granted that we have, and we just think of more. Oh, I desire this, I need that. Reframe your perspective. Look at the things that you have in abundance, and you'll become more grateful, which, as I said, is the antidote to unrealistic expectations. Because once you change your expectations of how life should be, you can begin to become more grateful and more happy about all these things. Again, it's your unrealistic expectations that cause that negative feeling. One of the examples that I love to use is, imagine this. If there's two people waiting for a train, imagine one of them is me and one of them is some other guy, same age as me. He's on his way to work. Let's say I'm going into Glasgow to record the podcast. We're both sitting there waiting for the train. Now, as you know, ScotRail can be very unreliable. So let's say this train gets cancelled 10 minutes before we're meant to get on it. How does the other person react? They fling their arms up in the air, say, oh, this is bullshit, this is terrible, I can't fucking believe this has happened to me. Oh, and guess what? At the same time, it starts raining. And then say, oh, and it's fucking raining today, oh, this is terrible. Oh, I'm going to be late for work, oh, this is the worst day ever. Now, let's say that happened to me. Now, that is unfortunate. It is not ideal. I understand that. However, me complaining about it isn't going to change that situation. So I can look at it for what it is. Okay, the train's been cancelled. Trains get cancelled all the time. What can I do now? I can focus on getting to where I need to be. That is the way to respond to things based off expectations. When somebody expects everything to be on time and everything to be perfect all the time, and then they have all these outbursts, no wonder they're not happy. So what people say is, oh, well, the reason that I was so upset today was because the train didn't arrive on time. No. The reason you were so upset was because of your unrealistic expectations. So we need to bring things back. If you expect everything in life to go perfectly all the time and you become unhappy the second that they don't go perfectly, of course you're going to be unhappy. Of course you're going to be unfulfilled. So change your expectations. That's what we need to do. And again, gratitude is the way to do that, by lowering our expectations. One of the things that Demartini says is that happiness comes from setting realistic expectations and living in alignment with your values. So two of the most important points that we've went over already. We need to set realistic expectations, because when we set unrealistic expectations, we invite depression into our lives. We also need to live in alignment with our values, our highest values. That is authenticity. That is what he says we should all aim for as human beings, to live authentically. Because when we start to fake our lives and we live in alignment with other people's values, that is not authentically living. Now, the next point is a really interesting one. This was one that I'd never really heard before, or never went into in detail. And it was the fact that infatuation is not love. Now, you've probably experienced this before, in the sense of you've met a new person and you become totally infatuated by them. Everything about them's perfect. You're crazy about them. You think, oh my God, this is love. This is the best thing I've ever seen. This is the best person I've ever met. He really warns against infatuation. He says, if infatuation is too strong, he says love cannot develop. We need to understand the difference between infatuation and love. Infatuation is a strong desire and an idealized view of the other person. So you see this person as all good and no negative. That's one of the things we've worked on most at the seminar. For example, he took people that were going through grief or people that were going through resentment, and what he done is he got these people to look at the people that they were grieving or resenting over, and he got you to break down their traits. And with those traits, what we had to do was look at, right, well, what were the things that I'm idealizing about this person, and what is the opposite of that? What are the things that are negative about this person? Because believe me, everybody has a downside. Everybody has negatives to them. So the antidote to infatuation is to look at those things. What are the downsides? Because there are always downsides. Whereas when you become infatuated by someone and you always look at the upsides, then what will happen is you will do anything to please that person. And by pleasing that person, what you'll do is you'll live out of alignment with your own values, because you'll try to then just copy their values and do everything to please them. And what happens over time is you begin to live unauthentically. And then you'll start to be unfulfilled because you've changed everything in your life for this one person. He says that love is when both people are living in alignment with their own values. It's not the other way. It's not one person molding their values to suit the other person. Each person is living authentically. That is love. Again, when you drop your values for others, like for example, like if you start to value this, take on board this other person's values, what will happen over time is you'll drop your own values. You'll begin to resent that person over time, because then you'll think, oh fuck, I used to do this, I used to love this thing, but now I don't because of this person. You will begin to resent them. Resentment is a very heavy substance to carry, not something we want. Now again, just to go over those points from the top, the very first one we went over was the point in the 7 key areas of life. And in terms of we have to live in alignment with all these 7 key areas, we can't let any of those areas of life take a downturn. We have to take total responsibility and ownership, governance for each of those areas of our life. That is how we achieve self-mastery. The second part was value determination. Clarifying what you value most in life and living authentically in alignment with them, following through on those values. The next thing was the fact that people will oppose those values. That's totally natural. We have to understand that. But the key thing with that and the benefit of that is we will build really strong relationships once we understand what our key values are and we see them in other people. That's connection. Once both of you have very similar values, that's where real connection comes from. And again, you will only notice that connection if you understand what your key values are, what your true values are. Depression is often caused by having unrealistic expectations. Again, gratitude is the antidote to unrealistic expectations. We have to see life for what it is, for the reality. The next point, infatuation is not love. As we just went over there, we can be infatuated by someone. That causes us to live in alignment with their values instead of ours. And then over time, we begin to resent them. So all some incredible points from here. Now, I have many more points in that PDF, which is in the description below. If you want to read through them, go into the description. You'll be able to download it for free. Now, the quote I want to leave you with today is from Dr. John Demartini. And he says, when the voice and the vision inside of you is more profound and more clear and loud than all opinions on the outside, you have begun to master your life. And that was something for me that I was like, whoa, holy shit. Again, when the voice and vision inside your head is more profound than the opinions on the outside. Especially in the last year, I made it very clear what my values are in life. And I made changes in my life to live totally in alignment with those values. So most of my time has been spent on my own self-improvement, on my own business and my own travel and experiences. I have become more fulfilled than I've ever been in my entire life. So that quote couldn't be more true. I've begun to feel more progress in my life and more fulfillment in my life, more mastery in my life by living in alignment with those values. So again, by understanding what you truly want in life, what the things you value most are, that is the key to self-mastery. That is the key to happiness and fulfillment at the end of the day. Now, I hope you did enjoy today's episode. As I said, you have that in the description below for more notes. If you enjoyed this episode, you would most likely like my email newsletter. I release it every single Monday. It's called the best day of the week because that is exactly what Monday is, the very best day of the week. If you want to sign up to it, it is also in the description below, as is my Instagram. As ever, thank you for watching this episode. I hope you gained some value from it, and I hope you gained something that you can apply to your own pursuit of constant improvement. Thank you for listening.